Welcome to the podcast where we turn adversity into strength and laughter into resilience. Your host, Joey Misbehaves, a voice that once faced the darkest shadows but found the courage to rise above. This is Unmuffled Banter. It's a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. As someone who knows the weight of anxiety and depression all too well, Joey's here to reach out to those of you who've battled the same afflictions, teased and bullied as a kid for being different. His clothes, his hair, even his name's reason for mockery. But amidst the storm of laughter, he never let it dampen his sense of humor or his compassion for others. In the face of adversity, he stood tall. He defended his friends, taking on the verbal and sometimes physical bashing, all while embracing the power of laughter. And it's from those moments his banter has always remained unmuffled. This is for you, all those warriors out there, fighting battles within themselves. Together, we'll share stories of growth, resilience, and the beauty of finding humor even in the darkest times. This is Unmuffled Banter, and now your host, Joey Misbehaves.
I'd like to thank my buddy Keith Kramer for the introduction. You can find him on Sunday Stripped, acoustic music that rocks. I'll leave links in the show description. That's right, folks. I have escaped from the loony bin. I'm once again a free man. In all seriousness, I did have an extended stay in a mental institute or behavioral center, however you prefer to refer to those institutions. I was not okay. I have trouble dealing with life at times. I struggle with depression and anxiety and self-harm. And, I asked for help. I said I wasn't okay. That's not an easy thing to say or admit to. And I know I'm not the only person out there that feels that way or has those feelings or gets down and has thoughts of harming themselves or worse. And when those times come up, we need to look at the situation and understand that we have people that love us and care about us, even when we think we don't, or even when we feel like that we don't. I'm lucky or fortunate to have a daughter that is amazing and is capable of just looking at me and understanding that I'm not okay without me even having to say anything. She's been that way since she was 13, 14 years old, and she could just come up and put her arms around me and hug me and say, "Dad, it's going to be all right." I've never understood it. She just has the ability to know when I'm not doing well. And she does check on me regularly. I have a niece that checks on me regularly. They're both champions for my mental health and well-being. I don't know how I would make it without them. On some of my worst days, it's just a simple text message from one of them or even both of them that brightens my day up. And I don't think they understand how much they help me. And I don't think I could really explain to them how much they help me. I also have my wonderful and beautiful better half that goes out of her way to make sure that my days are not only better but more comfortable. And, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. While I was in the nut house, she put this office together for me to be able to sit here and record this audio, because this is something that I thought about doing for a long time. It's something that I thought could be a healthy coping mechanism for me, that it could be something that gives me some kind of direction in life. I have felt like I've been useless or even like I'm a burden at times. You can only watch so much television or so many movies or binge watch Netflix so much before you start going insane. And I lost it. I went insane, or at least it felt like I went insane. And I've finally gotten on some medications, or some regimen of medications that I feel like are helping, and my moods are more level than what they have been in the past few months. And did the doctors help me, or the psychiatrists help me? Yeah, but to be honest, even some of the patients inside of the institution helped me as well. We were in there for some of the same reasons. We all had issues with self-harm or making comments of wanting to do away with ourselves. And we had a lot of free time. We would talk and discuss our situations, and just having those comforting moments of understanding that we're not alone in the world, that we're not the only ones that feel that way. And sometimes on the outside, you're not around those people all the time, and you're around family members who love you and care about you, but they don't have the same struggles that you have. They don't have the same mentality of fighting a war against yourself, and they don't understand that all the time. And having those people in those situations, there's a comfort level there, and I'm not sure I can really explain it to where somebody that doesn't have those struggles where they would understand. I've always struggled with mental health for as long as I can remember, even as a child. Perhaps it's hereditary, or perhaps it's just chemical imbalances. I'm not sure. I don't understand the science, or what goes on inside the body that can cause things to happen with our thoughts. But I know some of the things that I've been through in life and how it's affected me mentally and emotionally, and I know that plays a big part on it. And I know that as a kid, I had to deal with some trauma, and it has affected me as an adult. I haven't recovered from some of those things, and it's something that my parents played a big part into, whether it was neglect or whatever the case may be. I'm sure we'll get into that more at some point. This is meant to be an outlet for me, and perhaps even other people. Keith, the guy that did my intro, he's volunteered himself to be a guest at some point, and I'm going to take him up on that, because we've talked about suicide and how it's affected his family a bit, or how he's had struggles with alcoholism, and he's been sober for 15 years. And I'm proud of the guy for that. I'm proud of my family and my mom, because she did drugs when she was a young adult, and she was able to get off drugs and get cleaned up for her kids, and somewhat recover from that. But having emotional damage herself and emotional trauma from her childhood and young adulthood, and she wasn't able to ever overcome that. And her depression and anxiety was a huge struggle for her in life, and that affected me. It caused me to have a lot of pain and sorrow as a kid and as a young adult. And the older that I've gotten, it's played a factor into my own mental health, because I think back to those times and they're painful for me. And my mom died at a young age. She was 50, and I'm 45 now, and getting closer to that age and having physical ailments and mental ailments. I got some fear there. I'm not going to lie. Now, I know that, she was a heavy smoker, and she did drugs when she was younger, and she didn't take care of herself. and that led to her failing health, I'm sure. She died of lung cancer, and she had cervical cancer as well. So I know that played a part of her health. My dad, he's been diagnosed with lung cancer. He has smoked since he's 5 years old. And for those reasons, as a young kid, I decided that I was never going to smoke. I was never going to do drugs. Because in some ways, was never going to be like my parents. I was never going to be like my dad because of those traumas or because of that emotional neglect that I felt. As an adult, I wanted to make sure that my own child didn't have those issues or have those things that she needed to have to overcome because of her parents. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to protect her from things as much as I would have liked to do so because I've had failings of my own with marriages and 3 divorces, and I hope that she's been able to heal from those and understand that my mistakes so that maybe she won't make the same ones or even the same mistakes that her mom has made. There's been failings on both sides, and I guess as a parent, I want my kid to be protected too much, and I guess maybe we all do as parents, but I'm aware of my daughter struggles with anxiety and depression at times, and she takes medications, and fortunately she's never had severe issues like I've had. And instead of being in a position where she feels like self-harming herself, she's an advocate for those that feel like they want to harm themselves or take their own lives, and she wants to be someone that is loving and compassionate and wants to be someone that is there for people that need that love and that kindness. And I'm proud of her for that. She's taken a different road than what I traveled, and that makes me proud, not just as a parent but as a human being, to know that I took part in raising someone that has that compassion. And we've talked about my struggles as a young adult, as a child, as a teenager, when she was younger or when she was in high school. And she's made some of her own mistakes when she was in high school, and she had some boyfriends that I didn't feel like were good for her, or that I didn't feel like were treating her as well as they should have been. And she would ignore me, or she would choose to be kind-hearted and give somebody more of a chance than what I would have. And then later she'd come back and be like, "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have listened. You were right." And I'd try to tell her, I only tell you the things that I tell you because I've made those mistakes, and I don't want you to have to make those mistakes. And she understands that, and she does listen to me, but she also understands that I'm not always right. And I've told her that I'm not always right. Yeah, she's going to listen to me, but she also needs to heed my words as well, because I react emotionally to things that she's going through, and I may get upset or angry at somebody in her life more than what I should, because she's my kid, and I think she deserves a certain amount of respect or a certain amount of love. And if I feel like she's not getting it, then yeah, I'm going to be upset about it, especially with how I've been treated as an adult to some extent by people that I've been in relationships with. And I don't want her to have to deal with that or feel like she's been mistreated. So if I overreact, I want her to put me in my place and check me. And I'm accepting of that and understanding of that. And I don't think a lot of parents are. I don't think a lot of parents, listen to their children like that. And I feel like I've been able to do that because I've always had respect for my child. Even when she was little, I would get down on her level and talk to her like she was an adult, even though she wasn't, because I feel like everybody deserves a certain amount of respect. They say respect should be earned, but I don't believe that. I believe that respect should be given until it's not deserved. And I know that my beliefs are backwards than what most people's are, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Maybe I'm a little more screwed up than what I think, because of I have this thing about me where I'm able to put myself in other people's shoes, or put myself in situations that I've never been in, and be able to be like, okay, this is what's going on. This is what I think should be a solution to the problem, and let's see how it goes. And if that doesn't work out, then we'll go on and try to find another solution. I've always been that guy. I've always been this guy that I felt like has had a crisis management persona, and I've been able to shut off my emotions and not react emotionally to situations. And I felt like that has been part of what has caused trauma in my life, because not only has it been a good thing to bottle up my emotions and react rationally to situations that no person in their right mind should be able to react rationally to. For example, my daughter's mom, when we were going through our divorce, she was with another man, and when I met him for the first time, I was dropping my daughter off to her mom, and I turned around when he pulled up and seen him for the first time, and instead of acting like the tough macho guy that most guys would and trying to start a fight or an argument because this guy's taking my wife and my child away from me, I shook his hand and introduced myself. And then I turned around and told my daughter that I loved her, and I left. And yeah, on that drive away from that house, I bawled my eyes out, and it broke me down like nothing else ever had at that point. But nobody knew it. And it's a situation that I shouldn't have been able to control myself in. But my crisis management persona kicked in. And that guy did what he always does. He solved the problem. And he did what was right, not what was easy. And I'm proud of who I am, but I'm proud of who that guy was. I don't see myself as that guy anymore. I feel like I've made mistakes in my life since then that makes me unproud of myself, that I didn't live up to being that guy, and that I feel like I shouldn't be forgiven for. And that's part of what had led me down the road that I've been living on for the past 5 to 6 years. And part of that is what has led me to being into institutions a few times because of self-harm or wanting to hurt myself, or being in in an emergency room because of cutting myself and my daughter having to walk into the room at one of the lowest points of my life. And, she's a young adult and she's not a child anymore. She's just finished her second year of college and she's capable of dealing with emotional situations. But she shouldn't have to deal with something like that because that's my burden. It shouldn't be hers. But I know that it's something that I did to her. It's not something that I just did to myself. I did it to her and I did it to everybody else that cares about me and that loves me. I did it to my niece. She was there. And I know that wasn't easy for her either. And it was hard for me when she walked into the room. And it was hard for me to walk into the living room with cuts all over my arms and blood dripping down my arms and telling my better half, this beautiful woman that I love, that I'm not okay, and her looking at me and saying, "What did you do?" And how do you respond to something like that? I don't remember what happened or what was said after she made that comment. I just remember being in the emergency room and that I was evaluated. I'm sorry. I need a few moments. I'll be back. I apologize for that. Got me some coffee and took a few moments. Changed over to laundry. I always make sure that I do the laundry for my wife so she doesn't have to do that. It makes me feel good because I'm doing something for somebody who hates doing it. She despises doing the laundry and I don't mind doing it. So it makes me feel good being able to do something for somebody that hates doing something. So my better half is very understanding of my mental health, and it runs a lot deeper than just that because we ended up divorced in 2017. Completely my fault. I broke her heart and destroyed her trust, and I didn't deserve her forgiveness. I still don't feel like I deserve her forgiveness, and I think that's probably part of what my mental issues are at times, because I have a very low self-esteem or a very low self-worth. Part of that is because of my physical health. I have rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia, and I have issues because of a motorcycle accident in 2019 that affects my head and my body. I have numbness in my arms and my hands and also in my right leg, and I see a neurologist for all of that. I'm going to potentially have to have surgery on my neck. I have some disc messed up in my neck that is causing a lot of those issues. So we're still unsure what's causing a lot of the issues with my head, with the migraines. They think it might have been some undiagnosed concussions. So hopefully that's something that can be resolved more than what it has been. They have gotten me on some medication that help with the migraines. I'm not having migraines for weeks at a time anymore. They last days now instead of weeks. Or I may have a migraine for 2 or 3 days, but it's more where my head hurts. I take medication for it, it goes away, and then I get up the next day and it's the same thing. My head hurts and I have to take medication for it again. So it is a lot better than what it used to be, and I'm thankful for that, and I'm more capable of functioning on a day-to-day basis to some extent. I have my days where I stumble over my words and I slur my words a lot. Was worried about that with doing a podcast. But I've also realized, because this is actually the third time I've tried recording an episode, part of that is because I've changed the direction of the podcast. At first, I was going to call it Dad's Diary because it was something I was going to do for my daughter, which it still is meant for my daughter more than anybody else, because I want to leave something for her where I have a really close relationship with her, and not just as a father-daughter relationship, but a friendship relationship where I can go to her and talk about my mental health or about stuff that is bothering me, and she can come to me and talk to me about her relationships or stuff that's bothering her. And I'm happy that we have that closeness or have that bond, but there's still things about me that she's not aware of, and there's things that I'm not proud of that she's unaware of, that I'm sure she will learn about through this journey. And I'm going to be ashamed of some of those things, and it's going to hurt me to talk about those things, but I'm willing to do that because I want her to have a better understanding of who her father is and who he was as a young man and as a teenager and as a child. Because I didn't have that with my parents. I didn't have a closeness or a good relationship with my mom before she passed away, or as a child. And I didn't have that as a child or a young adult with my dad. I have gained that with my dad as an older adult. During my mom's battle with cancer, my dad and stepmom took care of my mother because I was unable to do so. I was going through a divorce at the time with my daughter's mom and working in the evenings from 4 to midnight, and she needed 24/7 care. So my dad and my stepmom provided that for my mom. And for that reason, I felt like I owed my dad something, but it turned into a friendship with him, and I've talked about my mental health with him, and at one point, told him that I had feelings of wanting to kill myself when I was younger, and talked to him about what brought that about, and about a friend who had killed himself when he came back from being in Afghanistan, and my struggles with that. And I still struggle with that a bit, not as much, and a big part of that is because of my wife and because of our divorce, because it was his passing was a big issue for me, and it caused issues in my divorce because I was allowing his death to affect my life more than the people that were living in my life, and that was unfair to them. It was unfair to my wife, it was unfair to my kids, it was unfair to me, And it took my wife getting angry and upset with me to point that out to me. And sometimes it takes someone's anger to spill out, to speak some hard truths. And I wish that wasn't true, but it is. And thankfully, I'm a person that I can recognize a truth and accept it for what it is instead of accepting it for something that it's not. And was it meant to be hurtful in the moment? Probably to some extent, but I think it was meant more to point out that my priorities weren't where they needed to be. And she was right. My priorities weren't where they needed to be. And it took me a long time to regain that sense of putting my priorities back to where they belonged. And I hate to say that or to admit that, but it's true. And we were divorced for 2.5 years, 3 years, but we were able to overcome that. And she showed back up at my house one night, and thankfully we were able to overcome our divorce and things that had occurred or been said through those times, and regain our love for each other. And in a lot of ways, I love her more now than I ever could have imagined. And I don't know how to express that to her. And that hurts me, because sometimes it's easier for me to say I'm not okay than to express or to show love, whether that's emotionally through words or physically. And I'm not sure why that is the case. And I hate that part of me that is damaged, and I'm working on that and trying to improve myself where that is concerned. And, you know, she doesn't hold that against me or put me down or berate me because of those things. She accepts me for who I am and loves me for who I am, and I couldn't ask for anyone to love me more than what she loves me. And at the time of our divorce, I didn't feel like she loved me, but that's more my fault, because I didn't feel like I was lovable, that I deserved love. And it took that divorce for me to be able to accept the fact that she did love me, and that she does love me unconditionally. And I'll be honest, I don't understand why she does, because I still don't feel like I'm worth it. But at least I understand the depth of her love for me. And I have that same depth of love for her. And I would do anything for her. And most people in life don't have that kind of love for somebody else. Or at least have that kind of love in return. Or feel that kind of love in return. And I do. And I'm thankful for that. This has been a pretty deep episode, and I'm completely aware of that. But I also am aware of the fact that it's not always going to be that way. There's going to be some laughter, just as Mr. Keith had said in the intro. I'm a goofy guy, I'm a funny guy, and I like to crack jokes. Like I was telling my wife last night while I was in the loony bin, we were watching true crime stories, and one of the nurses, she's like, I don't know if y'all should be watching that. That could be a potential trigger for some people that are in here. And of course, my response was, we're not in here because we want to off each other. We're in here because we want to off ourselves. And of course, the nurse, she's like, I'm not sure y'all should still be watching it. And at this point, we gain up together and we're like, okay, first of all, we need to look out, and we're going to post the one by the door, and we're going to continue watching our true crime, but we're going to be a little more careful about it. So, yeah, even in situations like being inside of a behavioral center or a mental institution, I can find things that are funny or moments that are hilarious. So, and there'll be more things like that throughout episodes, and there may be episodes where it's nothing but me telling funny stories or things that I've turned from, that should have been negativity in my life or downtrodden moments in my life into laughter, because that's part of what this is about. It's turning adversity into something more than just that. And, if I can bring joy into somebody else's life or bring something positive into somebody's life who needs, whether that's a moment of inspiration or a moment of realization about a situation, then I'm capable of doing that. And I'm hoping that with time, my daughter becomes an active listener of this. It's not something that I'm going to make her aware of in the beginning. I want to get some episodes out there and become more comfortable in my own skin of having a personality online and being Joey Misbehaves, because that guy is different than the guy that she knows to some extent. And my daughter, she knows me as dude, because that's what she's had me in her phone as since she's 12 years old. She's always called me dude. I have no idea where it came from or why she started doing it, but yeah, that's my kid. She's just like me. She's a lot like me, even to the detriment of her mom's opinion. Her mother would much rather not have her personality be like mine, but I got the best out of that. When my daughter was little, she crawled to me first. She walked to me first. Her first word was Dada on Mother's Day. So, I feel like even though we're divorced, I've won every argument we've ever had without having to say anything. And, I love my kid more than life itself. And she's been a blessing in my life more times than I can count. And a lot of that is because she's able to bring laughter into my life by having the same kind of personality that I have and being quick-witted and being able to crack a joke. me and her mom ended up divorced when she was 3 years old. And when she was 16, we took her to get her driver's license together. And after she passed her test, we go to the DMV and her mom stays in the car. And we go in and get her license and we come back out to the car and we're sitting there for a moment and I go, wow, I can't believe that 13 years went by so quickly. I am sure glad that's over with. And my ex-wife, she's like, well, what do you mean by that? And my daughter's like, he means he's glad he never has to see you again because now I can drive myself. And my ex-wife, she's like, well, that's mean. And my daughter's like, no, that's not mean. What's mean is I'm jealous. I still have to see you. And I just died. I rolled in the backseat of that car. And of course, my ex-wife, she's just like, whatever, you're just like your dad, blah, blah. But, my daughter just had to give her that nudge. I'm just like my dad. I'm going to get my gig in on you and at the amusement of my father. And, I love that about my kid. And, my wife loves, being goofy also and being just, she's loud. Like she's really loud, and I give her a hard time about it a lot, but she's just got this great and wonderful personality that I don't thank her enough for it, but I love her personality because she's just goofy and silly a lot of times, and I just sit there and adore her for that. And having my daughter that's like that and having my wife that's like that and then being like that myself, there's a lot of joy in my life. And so it's not all sad, downtrodden, and I'm glad to be able to say that. And I'm happy to be able to sit here and say that, I love life. And even though there's times where I don't, the majority of the time, if I would just say, let me sit here and think about the good things in my life instead of getting stuck on the negativity or on, my depression or my anxiety and overthinking those situations, that, I do have a good life despite my health issues and my bad days where I'm going to be unable to record a podcast because I stutter or I can't find my words. Fortunately, being able to do this, I'm capable of editing out those situations where I'm unable to find my words, because I'll have things where I'm able to delete long pauses between my thoughts or between my words, and maybe a minute or two where I say something and then I make the next comment, and nobody's going to know that because it's an easy highlight and cut, and it's like I'm normal, where in reality that's not necessarily the case. And I wish that it was, but unfortunately it's not. But I'm okay with that, and I'm learning to accept my disabilities for what they are. And part of that is because of my wife and her graciousness and compassion, and I just wish she was here to be able to hear this and for me to be able to tell her, because I know it's something that she needs to hear. It's something that she deserves to hear. And I'm going to end this episode by just saying that I love you, honey, my dear. You're beautiful. You're amazing. And I wouldn't want to live this life without you. Until next time, folks, this is Joey Misbehaves.
You've been listening to Unmuffled Banter with Joey Misbehaves. Our passion is to speak to those warriors out there, fighting battles within themselves. And together, we come together as a family and share stories of growth, resilience, and the beauty of finding humor even in the darkest times. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But to contact us, send an email at unmuffledbanter@gmail.com and find Joey on Twitter at Joey Misbehave. Please know that if you're struggling and you just need someone to talk to, you can call the Suicide and Crisis Hotline. The number is simple, 988. The person on the other end will talk to you as long as you need. See you next time on Unmuffled Banter.